Welcome to Gardening with Heidi. Today we're going to cover the Areca Palm. It's a fantastic plant. It's actually one of my most useful landscape plants in my yard because it provides such a wonderful privacy. I live in Cape Coral, Florida, and it just gives me some nice edging around without having an actual fence. So I just want to just bring you into my world a little bit and share this plant with you. So this plant originated in Madagascar, which is off of the east coast of Africa. And it was said to have come here to the Americas with the Franciscan monks who actually brought some palms and some seeds and actually planted the first palm tree, maybe not this one, but planted it in California. Another unusual fact is that it is also said that during the Olympics in Los Angeles in 1932, I believe it was, they did a big restoration and beautification of the city and planted over 40,000 palms and employed a bunch of folks during the Depression. And it was just an amazing thing. And you can still find some of those palm trees today. And it's also what makes part of Los Angeles so famous. Something you might not know about this palm is that most people call it a tree, and you might catch me calling it a tree because, it's just in my brain, but it really isn't a tree. It is part of the classification of the monocot family, which is actually similar to this grass that you might be standing on. So can you imagine? We cut our grass every day, but here in Florida, we have grass that can grow up to 20 feet. And this big royal palm is a grass too. So how high is the grass in your yard? A couple more fun facts about palm trees, and maybe not specifically the Areca palm, but palm trees were used in biblical days when Jesus was entering the city. They actually laid these down in front of him while he walked in on his donkey. And yet another fun fact from the palm tree family. The largest palm tree, remember it's a grass, can grow up to 200 feet tall. What? Can you imagine that? I mean, I'm only 5 feet tall. Can you imagine how tall that grass is? You can find those in the Andes Mountains, and unbelievable. Google them. The Areca palm is hardy outside in zone 10 and 11. Now, this is a wonderful indoor plant as well. So you can feel free to grow this inside, and we're going to talk about what that might look like. But here in Southwest Florida, this plant can thrive outside very well. Now, sometimes it gets a little cold during our winter times, and it might brown a little bit, but that's okay. It can handle it. Just leave those on the tree. But what we're going to do here today is just talk about what this plant is good for. So now you can see that this is actually very good for some screen protection, some wind protection, and just some nice shade in our yard here. Palm trees are very good structurally because they're not a tree. Remember, they're a grass. So they can bend with the wind very well. So they can handle these hurricanes that we get down here in Southwest Florida. There really isn't any food qualities from this plant for human consumption. However, you can feed your cattle the leaves and possibly the seeds. So it can be used as a forage plant. Medicinally, there isn't really any part of the tree that I'm aware of that can be used medicinally. It is, however, used for structures. So palm fronds can be used to weave and make things. You can turn this into paper. There's a product that you can actually turn the palm fronds into disposable paper goods. So instead of using paper products for your disposable cups and bowls and plates, you can actually make them out of palm fronds. It can be used, palms are used to make all kinds of different structures, and thatch roofing comes from a palm tree, maybe not specifically this one, but it is a very versatile plant in creating things in use. It's very useful. Another great thing about it, let's say you want to start a compost pile in your yard. These are naturally they're self-cleaning palms. So what that means is these palm fronds just drop off naturally. You can see right here. It's just, it kind of dries out and it dries off naturally and it'll fall off. And this is just how you take it off the tree. Now, I walk around pretty much every day, pick up what drops off, and I put it in my bin. But if you were going to have a compost pile or so forth, what you could even do is just pull these off, set them on your mulch here, or you could add them into your compost pile because it's a brown material, which is very useful in building soil. So these can be, they're heavy droppers, so you can actually use this plant to increase your soil in your area, in your yard. This plant is found to not be toxic to your cats and dogs, so it's safe indoors and outdoors. So this is a great choice. The flowers you can see up here, that flower has actually gone to seed. But when those flowers come out, they definitely are pollinators, but this is not a plant that you would plant in your yard to increase pollination. However, it does bring bees to your yard if you're growing other things periodically. So you can see these seed pods come up. My preference is to trim them down before it goes to seed, as you saw in a previous video. If you do not and you leave them to mature on the plant, they will drop, and you can see these droplings right here on the ground. We're going to pan right down into here. You can see these green ones, yellowing ones. They come and they look like this. They dry out and they look like this. And when they get watered, you have another tree. So you can see why I trim my trees is so I don't have to come around and pluck all these out. Now, if I wanted to start a palm farm, I could pick these out and start a palm tree farm, but that isn't one of my priorities. But I could share these with my friends. We could give these to other people. So, hey, it's a very useful plant that's super easy to propagate. And talking about that, that's how I would propagate these. Seed. You don't cut these and graft them or anything like that. The seed is so viable. It's so prolific. You can see there's just so many on there that this is a plant that you start from seed. Very easy. So if you're going to be planting these outside in your yard, if you're in zone 9 or 10, I have some recommendations. Like I said, when I moved here, these plants were as tall as my knee when I moved in. And you can see now, this has been 17 years of growth. So they do well, but they do take some maintenance. And so I'm going to just give you some recommendations if you choose to plant this plant in your yard, okay? It is recommended that you space them. This planting here is about 4.5 feet from center of plant to center of plant. Now, the base of this plant is said to be able to get into full maturity 5 to 10 feet across. So you can still, these are still growing, but I trim them quite often, pretty hard trim once a year. You should trim your plants here also when they're a little bit dormant. So that's before April comes. So April to September is when they're growing. So, and we have a rainy season in that time as well. So you want to be careful to not open any wounds on this plant during rainy season, and typically around year round, because diseases and things can move in to the plant. And we're going to show a little bit one of those here in just a few minutes. So if you stick with me to the end, we will, I'm going to show you the disease that actually came into Florida, I think via potentially hurricanes, which is possible. But I have that I'm going to show you. So if you have that on your plant or be aware of it, don't buy that plant or remove that plant from your yard. So stick around. If you like what you're hearing, please smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell, because when that bell, if you hit that, you know what that means? Every time I post, I come right to your inbox. Another planting pro tip on this. Um, I love having the privacy, but a lot of times your houses just don't have a lot of space. This was only planted about 5 feet from the foundation of the house out. And you can see over the 17 years, right when they were little, it wasn't a problem. When they get mature, they grow up, they reach over your house. Now remember those seed pods? Well, they drop. All those things fall into your gutter and can cause you problems. So my recommendation, other than what you might find on the internet, is 7 feet. If you put 7 feet out, you're still going to get the privacy. You're still going to get the windbreak. You're still going to get the shade on the side of your house, keeping things down. So you can kind of see this is 5 feet. And because of this, I've had to come in here and trim some of these things because they were running right into the house. And the problem with this tree is when they get big and you have to trim one of these big mature pieces, you open up a big wound on this plant. And if you open up a wound under 4 feet on this plant, you can be susceptible to some funguses, which we're going to show you next. All right, so here again, this was about 5 feet off the house, and so we had to do some hard trimming on this side, and unfortunately this cluster of palm tree got the fungus. So this is called Ganoderma. It's in the family of the Ganodermas, and this is very toxic to palm trees. Once they get it, it's lethal. There's no cure. The fungus spores can drop and go into the soil, so you will never be able to plant a palm tree here ever again. This material is now considered diseased and we need to kind of get rid of it. So I just learned about this. So we're going to have to probably potentially remove this, and then hopefully the roots don't come over here and touch this plant and spread it. Okay. Now this right here is what we're talking about. However, the really cool thing about this in nature is this is actually a super highly sought after medicinal plant called the reishi mushroom as well. So this is used in Eastern medicine for many things, and you dry it and you make a tincture. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm growing a medicinal plant. That I didn't realize that it was actually a lethal toxic thing to this specific tree. So you can have a good thing and a good thing growing together, and it's not good, unfortunately. So it's interesting how God works that way, but we want to remove this so the spores don't drop and spread, but I can actually take this and make some medicine out of it. So you can see here's a little bit coming off too right there. So take care of your plants. You don't want to spread this to your neighbors. They might get mad at you. All right, so these are the tools you need to take care of this plant in your yard. Gloves. Get yourself a good pair of gloves. Leather gloves are good. You can see these have been used a little bit. This type of a lopper is really good. Okay, I prefer this because the bases are pretty strong and it doesn't take so much wear and tear on your hands. Okay, this tool is wonderful. This is a Wolf Garden. This is a hand one, but I don't use this for a hand one because these are kind of serrated and it's rough on the plant. However, I use this for the taller ones. So this is kind of cool. You actually click this button here, pull this out, so the handle removes, and you can stick it right in there and click it in. This is an extension one, so I can, reach up very high and get things like that. So this is definitely a tool. If you don't have a landscape company that's managing your plants, you're going to want to get to this once they get mature enough. And then also, this is good for reaching in and doing the small ones that pop up when you're trying to manage your plants. This is a Fiskars. This is what I prefer to use. It has a nice spring in there so it doesn't get caught and your hands don't have to do a lot of work. This is the preferred pruners in the industry. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of like cleaning them out, because you can shape this tree to be a fence, to have privacy, to be full and kind of leafy all the way to the base. Some people clean them out in the middle and just want the top the top foliage. It is good to work on pruning them out in the winter when it's dormant, when it's dry. you know, you want to have good airflow coming into the plant too, because diseases and things can get in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit right here. So let me pick one that's very easy to see. So for instance, if I'm wanting to prune this one right here, you're going to want to come right up to the base here, okay? And then just a cut. And if you could put an angle on it like that, the water will drip down and it won't, you don't go straight across like this. You put it at an angle so the water in the heat, it can heal up, okay? So that's how you want to cut it close. If you have a trimming company, a lot of times they get lazy and they'll just come along with their shears and just go straight across and cut it here. And then when you walk, I have a story here. So the only plant that has ever sent me to the ER is this plant. Let me tell you this story. It's a good one. So that is why you have to use these plants require eye guards, because this is what happened. I was down here cleaning out this stuff like this. But you see here, you see this one that's poking out because they didn't trim it right down at the end? I went in with my eye and that went right into my eyeball. Sliced it. I was freaking out. I don't think Keith was home. My husband wasn't home. It was just my kids. Nobody drove. So I had to go to my neighbor's house and they looked at me and were like, oh my gosh, we got to get you to the ER. So we go to the ER. I go in and I actually knew the lady that was checking me in. And she's like, Heidi, what the heck happened to you? This is terrible. Like, we need to get a specialist in here. And like, filled me in, went into the doctors, and I just prayed. I'm like, God, please heal this. I don't, I want my, I could see, but I could actually see my white separating. And it was crazy. So let me finish the story, then I'll show you how to do that. But so I'm in the ER, I'm in the doctor's room, I'm just praying, praying, praying. The guy comes in, puts some drops in, looks at it, he's like, you have nothing wrong with your eye, and then pulls out this piece of the tip of the palm, which, anyway, there was a piece that broke off in there. And, but there was no cut, there was no bleeding. I was fine. I was like, thank you, Lord, for he like healed me. It was one of my crazy healing stories. But this plant, eye protection. Okay, so make sure you got your glasses on. Now you can see here that when the seeds drop from the tree, they can actually fall right in there and start all of these lower pieces. So this is where kind of the maintenance can be. This can be a high maintenance tree to manage, depending on the look you're going for. So you can see this is creating a nice full privacy area here. Whereas you can see this plant here was trimmed up a little bit harder and the majority of the foliage is on the top. So I can just show you. So you're going to want your hand clippers, and you can just simply come in here and just clip them off right at the base. Again, remember, you don't want to open too many wounds when it's rainy season. However, I'm just demonstrating here. You can just cut them right at the base. Now, you just kind of want to think about if you wanted another big frond to grow in here, you would just pick one that was around these and get rid of the ones you don't want and keep one if you need one. This one is especially close to my house, so I've really thinned this one back. That's why it's so aired out like that. I don't want these growing up. I don't want them in my gutters. I don't want them close. So I'm hitting them when they're little, so it's less wound, and hopefully they won't get that disease. Remember also, oh, look who's here. That's Scout. Remember, you also wanted to, use the isopropyl alcohol to clean your tools. I've already done that. I've demonstrated that before. 91% is the best. So anyway, so that's all you do. You just can clean them up like that. Sometimes you'll find that there'll be another frond kind of growing off the side of one of these. I like to get rid of those, so you're going to want to trim those as soon as you see them. This one I caught a little late, obviously here, but you can see this little bulge coming out. I try to get rid of those as soon as possible, but you'll just see that happen. I'm not sure why that happens. And then also here you can see that I did have to get rid of this. This was like running right into my gutter. So I couldn't use this tool. So that's where that hand saw came into play. And I'm going to demonstrate how you use that hand saw on the pole to trim up the those seed pods we were talking about. Um, there's one up here actually that's pretty much just hanging. It's actually just hanging off the, I think it's already off the tree. Nope. Okay. I need to get this a little bit higher. So you don't want to rip on the tree. You don't want to cause damage up at the top of the tree as well. And something to be aware of is there's a frond that's the leading frond. You never want to damage the youngest frond on the top. That can really inhibit the growth of that. For some reason, this isn't clicking in here as easy as I like. You got to get that click, otherwise you won't have any strength in your bar. So I got to find where it's connected to the tree. For some reason. There we go. All right. So this is the seed pod of the Areca tree. I keep saying tree. I'm telling you, I've said it 100 times in this video. So that's where, you know, it just gets in our language, but it's a palm. Okay. So these are it. They fall over, and again, if you leave them sit there in the rain and the sun and the humidity, you will get more trees. So I'll have some cleaning up to do. Remember, put these inside of a container or bin that has a closed bottom. Otherwise, once they sit outside, they'll just fall off. You'll have a mess. So trimming your trees, you want to keep an eye on those. Remember to like and subscribe to this video. I really appreciate you spending your time with us today, with me today. We went over a lot of fun things. I hope the stories are good. If you have a plant that you're interested in that you haven't seen, put a comment in below. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you want to maybe see potentially in the future. If you have a question, leave a question, and I'd be happy to answer it for you. So keep gardening.